When you're young, people ask about your dreams. When you're old, they ask if you remembered to take your pills. That sentence, spoken softly by a 74-year-old retired teacher named Helen, hit me harder than I expected. It was laced with humor, but also deep sadness, the kind that settles in after years of being quietly overlooked. And if you're over 60, maybe you felt something like that too. That subtle, creeping sense that the world has begun to see through you rather than at you. That people speak slower to you, not out of respect, but out of assumption. That your worth, once tied to your roles, parent, spouse, professional, is now blurred in the eyes of others. But here's the truth no one talks about. Aging doesn't just change your body, your skin, or your schedule. It shifts your entire position in the world. And that shift comes with harsh truths. Some are painful, others are strangely liberating. But all of them are necessary if you want to live your final chapters with peace, power, and clarity. In this video, I'm going to share 7 of those truths I've learned not from textbooks, but from over a decade of walking alongside older adults. I've seen widows rebuild their lives, grandfathers set boundaries with entitled children, and quiet seniors discover confidence they never knew they had. These are not fluffy affirmations. They're the real, often uncomfortable insights that help you stop being everything for everyone and start living for yourself again. Because let's face it, for most of your life, you gave. You gave time. You gave money. You gave love, sometimes to people who didn't deserve it. And somewhere along the way, you started waiting for someone to notice, to say thank you, to finally treat you the way you've always treated others. But waiting can turn into a kind of prison, can't it? So today, I want you to stop waiting. I want you to listen, not to me, but to the part of you that's been silenced for too long. The part that says, I matter too. If any part of you feels like this message was meant for you, then I invite you to stay with me. Because the next few minutes might just shift how you see your relationships, your past, and your power. And if you're new here, I'd love for you to subscribe and turn on notifications. Not for my sake, but because I believe content like this deserves to find the people who need it most. And if something I say resonates with you, really hits home, leave a comment below. Not to flatter me, but to remind yourself and others watching that you're not alone, that your voice still counts, that you're still becoming. This isn't about complaining. It's not about blaming your kids, your spouse, or society. It's about reclaiming the part of you that got lost in the noise of caretaking, surviving, and always being the strong one. Because growing older doesn't mean fading away. It means finally becoming who you were always meant to be, without apologies, without guilt, and without waiting for permission. And now, let's get to it. The first harsh truth is one I've seen destroy peace of mind more than any health diagnosis or financial worry. It's this: not everyone who approaches you deserves your trust. Tip 1. Don't blindly trust everyone. He only calls when he needs money. And the worst part? I still pick up. That's what Margaret, a 76-year-old woman I worked with, told me after one of our sessions. She had spent decades raising 3 children on her own, juggling 2 jobs, and sacrificing her own dreams to provide for them. And now, in her later years, she found herself answering the phone not out of joy, but out of obligation, out of hope, even when she already knew what the call was about. If you've ever felt like someone only contacts you when they want something from your time, your energy, your attention, or your wallet, then you already understand the first harsh truth about aging. Not everyone who enters your life deserves your trust. As we grow older, we often become more open-hearted. Time softens us. Pain teaches us compassion. And after years of giving to others, we crave meaningful connections, people who see us, value us, care about us. But that very longing for connection can also become our greatest vulnerability. There are people who recognize this softness. They know exactly how to step into your life, speak the right words, offer a shoulder when you're lonely, and then slowly start taking. They may not even realize they're doing it. But over time, you begin to notice they only show up when they need something. They disappear when you're doing fine. They pressure you with guilt when you set boundaries. They make you feel like you owe them, just because you have a kind heart. I've seen it countless times. Older adults being drained not just financially, but emotionally and spiritually, by people who wrap manipulation in the clothing of love. And the worst part? It often comes from those we trust the most: family, longtime friends, even spiritual leaders. But here's what I want you to remember. Trust is sacred. It is not something you owe to anyone. It is something people earn over time, through consistency, kindness, and respect. You don't have to give someone access to your inner life just because they share your last name or showed up when you were at your lowest. This isn't about becoming suspicious or shutting yourself off from the world. It's about developing what I call compassionate caution, learning to observe before you open up. Trust doesn't have to be given all at once. In fact, it shouldn't be. Give it slowly. Watch how people treat you not just when you're down, but when you're doing well. Do they celebrate your joy or withdraw? Do they support your peace or disrupt it? Your intuition is still strong. I've worked with seniors for over a decade, and I've learned this. Your instincts don't fade with age, they sharpen. You just have to start listening to them again. If someone makes you feel guilty for saying no, take note. If someone calls only when they need something, pay attention. If you find yourself feeling tired, used, or uneasy after an interaction, that's not just being sensitive, that's your soul trying to protect itself. And you have every right to protect your peace. Let me say that again. You have every right to protect your peace. Create boundaries, not walls, but healthy fences that filter in the good and keep out the draining. It's okay to say, let me think about it. It's okay to say, I'm not available today. It's even okay to say, I need some space right now. That doesn't make you cold. That makes you wise. And wisdom is something you've earned. You've given so much to others, now it's time to give yourself the same loyalty. Surround yourself with people who add to your energy, not subtract from it. People who ask how you're feeling, not just what you can do for them. People who respect your time, your presence, and your heart. And if you're still reading this and nodding along quietly, I want you to pause for a second and do something bold. Leave a comment below and simply write 1. That one small action is you saying, I see the pattern, and I'm ready to protect myself. Or, if you're comfortable, share your own story, because your wisdom might just help someone else see a truth they've been avoiding. And if you're thinking, but what if it's family? What if it's someone I can't just walk away from? Then that leads us to the next truth, one that's even harder, but absolutely necessary to hear. Because the second tip is this: you must stop living to please others, even your family. Tip 2. Stop living to please others. You've spent most of your life putting others first. And maybe, just maybe, you thought that when the time came, when the children were grown, when the house was quiet, when your body began to slow, that someone would finally turn around and say, you've done enough. It's your turn now. But here's the bitter truth: that moment rarely comes. Instead, the expectations continue. The calls keep coming. The needs pile up. And somewhere, between the grocery runs for your daughter and the financial support for your grandson's tuition, you start to feel it, that quiet ache that whispers, when do I get to rest? One of the hardest lessons I've witnessed older adults face, especially women, is this: you are allowed to stop living just to make others happy. Even your family. Especially your family. For decades, you've made sacrifices. You gave up vacations, hobbies, careers, and sometimes even your health, all in the name of love. And yes, it was love. But when love becomes one-sided, when it turns into an obligation rather than a choice, it starts to wear you down. I've worked with countless seniors who say they feel invisible in their own homes. They cook, they clean, they babysit. They say yes because that's what they've always done. But inside, they're exhausted, unfulfilled, and quietly resentful. The truth is, some family members, without even meaning to, begin to treat their elders as resources, not human beings. You become the one they call when plans fall apart. The one they lean on emotionally, financially, and logistically. And they assume you'll always be there, like a steady tree that never asks for rain. But what about you? Who carries you? Who listens to your needs without rushing to talk about their own? Who tells you it's okay to say no, to rest, to do something just for yourself? The harsh reality is this: if you don't start honoring your needs, no one else will. And let me be clear, putting yourself first at this stage of life isn't selfish. It's self-preservation. It's restoration. It's long overdue justice. Think about it. You've already earned your stripes. You've done your part. You've poured your love and labor into people for decades. Now it's time to pour a little of that love back into yourself. That means setting boundaries, not because you're angry, but because you're wise. It means saying, I'm not available today, without explaining why. It means reclaiming the joy you once shelved, whether it's painting, gardening, traveling, or simply taking a quiet walk without being rushed. And yes, you may face resistance. People might act surprised, even hurt, when you finally start choosing yourself. But their discomfort does not mean you're doing something wrong. In fact, it often means you're doing something incredibly right. When I work with seniors in group counseling, we often do a simple exercise. I ask them to close their eyes and imagine a life where they don't owe anyone anything, not explanations, not help, not sacrifices. Just for a moment. Most of them open their eyes with tears. Not because the idea is selfish, but because it's so foreign. They've never allowed themselves to imagine a life where their time is truly their own. But here's the shift I want you to consider. You don't have to earn rest. You don't have to earn joy. You don't have to earn permission to live for yourself. You already have it. It's yours. And I promise you, when you begin to live this way, something beautiful happens. You don't become colder. You become clearer. You don't lose connection with others. You begin to connect with yourself. And from that place of clarity, your relationships become more honest, more balanced, and far more fulfilling. If you're reading this and feel even the slightest tug in your chest, the tiniest voice that says, "This is me," then this is your moment. Comment 2 below if this resonates. Or better yet, write down one thing you've put on hold for the sake of others and make a promise to revisit it, just for you. And if you're wondering, but how do I even start setting those boundaries? What if saying no makes things worse? Then you're ready for the next truth. Because the third harsh lesson is perhaps the hardest of all. You must be willing to distance yourself from toxic people, even if they're family. Tip 3. Distance yourself from toxic people, even family. It's one of the most painful decisions you'll ever face, but also one of the most freeing. Choosing peace over loyalty, even when that loyalty is to your own blood. I once worked with a woman named Teresa, 72, who would break down into tears every time she talked about her youngest son. Not because he was in trouble, but because every conversation with him left her feeling small. He rarely called unless he needed something, and when he did, his words were sharp, dismissive, and full of impatience. "He makes me feel like I'm a burden," she whispered once. "But I still answer the phone. He's my son." And that's where so many of us get stuck, the belief that because someone is family, we must endure. But here's the truth. Family is not an excuse for abuse. As we age, we start to realize that time isn't endless. We don't get to spend our years endlessly waiting for people to change, to apologize, or to treat us better. The people in our lives should offer safety, support, and mutual respect. And if they don't, even if they're family, it's okay to draw a line. Society teaches us that family is everything, that blood is thicker than water, that you're supposed to forgive, overlook, and tolerate no matter what. But what society doesn't talk about is the damage this mindset causes, the emotional exhaustion, the resentment, the quiet heartbreak that comes from giving love where none is returned. I've spoken to countless older adults who carry deep wounds not from strangers, but from their own children, siblings, or spouses. They've tolerated decades of criticism, emotional manipulation, and neglect, all because they were told that's just how he is or she's still your daughter. But let me ask you, what is the cost of this kind of loyalty? Your peace? Your self-respect? Your health? You are not a dumping ground for someone else's unresolved anger. You are not a therapist for someone who refuses to grow. You are not obligated to stay in pain just to preserve a connection that only exists on paper. Choosing to protect yourself from toxic people isn't selfish, it's sacred. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is step back. That doesn't always mean cutting someone off completely. Sometimes it means reducing contact. Sometimes it means setting time limits on visits, saying no more often, or refusing to discuss certain topics. It means making peace a priority, not guilt, not obligation, not appearances. And yes, I know that hurts. It feels unnatural. After all, you may have changed their diapers, paid their college tuition, or spent a lifetime holding their pain. But here's what I've learned. You can love someone and still protect yourself from them. Love is not submission. Love is not silence. Love, when healthy, does not hurt consistently. If someone in your life, even someone you raised, treats you with contempt, disregard, or entitlement, you are allowed to say, "This isn't okay, and I deserve better." And I know what some of you may be thinking. What if I'm alone? What if setting boundaries makes them walk away for good? Let me be honest. Yes, it might. But ask yourself this. What are you really losing if the only thing holding the relationship together is your willingness to be mistreated? I'd rather see you spend your days in solitude with peace than in company that drains the life out of you. Because peace, true peace, is priceless. In my years of working with seniors, I've seen people blossom after distancing themselves from toxic family. I've seen their faces soften, their sleep return, their spirits lift. And you know what they all say? "I wish I had done this sooner." You don't owe anyone unlimited access to you. Not your children, not your siblings, not even your spouse. You owe yourself a life that feels like freedom, not fear. If you're reading this and a specific name comes to mind, if your heart is racing a little because you know this applies to you, then it's time to stop denying it. It's time to protect your peace. If this truth hit home for you, leave a comment and write 3 below. Say it not just to me, but to yourself. I deserve to feel safe in my relationships. And if you're wondering what happens next, after you've created space, set limits, and chosen peace, there's one more truth you must face. Because the next harsh reality is this: you need to stop waiting for others to acknowledge your sacrifices. Tip 4. Stop waiting for others to recognize your sacrifices. There's a quiet kind of heartbreak that many older adults carry, one that doesn't come from illness, loss, or failure. It comes from something far more invisible: the absence of recognition. You gave your youth, your energy, your sleep-deprived years. You gave up dreams, postponed passions, endured stress, and kept your family afloat through storms they never even noticed. And now, you find yourself looking back, wondering, do they even see what I've done? I've sat with so many older men and women who share a similar ache. They don't want applause. They're not chasing trophies. But they long for someone, just one person, to say, I remember. Thank you. One woman, Eliza, once told me, I gave up my career to raise 3 kids. I cooked, cleaned, helped them through college. Now they barely call. And when they do, it's like I'm just a voice on the schedule, not the foundation they stood on. Her voice trembled, not with anger, but with a sadness too old for tears. And if you've ever felt that same sting, I want you to know this: you are not wrong for wanting to be seen. You are not weak for wishing someone acknowledged your sacrifices. But here's the hard truth you need to hear and accept: they may never thank you. And that has to be okay. Waiting for recognition is like waiting for rain in a drought. It might come, but it might not. And the longer you wait, the more you hand your happiness over to someone else's timeline. Let me say that again, because it matters. The longer you wait for others to acknowledge your worth, the more power you give them over your peace. I've worked with elders who spent decades sacrificing for others, only to spend their later years in quiet resentment. And what I've learned is this: recognition that never comes can rot the roots of love. It turns memories into pain. It reshapes pride into bitterness. It sours the joy of giving. But here's what can change everything. You don't need anyone's validation to prove that your sacrifices mattered. Your sacrifices were never small. They were never invisible. Just because others didn't notice doesn't mean they weren't real. You saw them. You lived them. You were there. And that alone is enough. So stop waiting for the thank you that may never come. Start offering that gratitude to yourself. Write it down. Say it aloud. Stand in front of the mirror and whisper, I did that. I showed up. I made it through. Because you did. And you deserve to own that. You deserve to walk through the rest of your life with your head held high, knowing that you were the one who held it all together when no one else saw the cracks. Think of all the energy you've poured into seeking validation. Now imagine what would happen if you redirected that energy into nourishing yourself, into taking that trip you never took, into learning that hobby you pushed aside, into becoming the person you were before duty took the front seat. That's not selfish. That's healing. If your children never fully understand the depth of what you gave, let that be their loss, not your burden. If your spouse never truly saw your effort, let that be their blindness, not your failure. Because here's the truth no one tells you. The moment you stop needing their recognition is the moment you become free. You can stop proving, stop waiting, stop shrinking, and start living exactly as you are, worthy, whole, and deeply enough. If this speaks to you, if it stirs something long buried, leave a comment and simply write 4. You don't have to explain it. Just write the number. Let it be your silent declaration. I release the need to be validated. And if you're wondering, okay, then what do I do with all this emotion I've carried for so long? You're ready for what comes next. Because the next truth is this: your age is not an excuse to stay stuck. In fact, it might just be the perfect reason to finally change. Tip 5. Stop using your age as an excuse not to change. I'm too old for that. It sounds harmless, doesn't it? But repeated enough times, those 6 words can become a prison. I've heard them from 60-year-olds and 90-year-olds alike, spoken with resignation or with the quiet sigh of someone who once dreamed but gave up. And every time I hear it, my heart breaks a little. Because here's what I know, after more than a decade working with seniors, it's never your age that limits you. It's the belief that age should limit you. One of my clients, a 78-year-old man named George, had always wanted to play piano, but he used to tell me, that ship has sailed. Until one day, he walked into a music store out of curiosity and walked out with a small keyboard in a beginner's book. 6 months later, he played Amazing Grace with trembling fingers, but with the biggest smile I've ever seen. I thought I was too old to learn, he said. Turns out, I was just too scared to start. This is the truth we often avoid. Age is not a barrier to growth, it's an invitation. You've lived long enough to know what matters. You've survived pain, loss, disappointment, and change. You've gained wisdom, patience, resilience. And yet, somewhere along the way, you may have accepted the lie that change belongs to the young. That transformation is for people with more time ahead. But the truth is, what you do with the time you have left is what gives it meaning. Don't confuse comfort with peace. Many older adults stay stuck in old habits, old relationships, even old pain, not because they're content, but because they believe it's too late to change. But I've watched people in their 80s start over, move cities, find love, write books, change diets, break addictions. And do you know what every single one of them had in common? They decided that too late was just a phrase, not a fact. We use age as an excuse because it's easier than facing fear. Fear of failing, fear of looking foolish, fear of starting from zero again. But let me ask you this. How many things have you put off? Not because you couldn't do them, but because you thought they no longer belonged to someone your age? How many times have you silenced your own curiosity, your desires, your hunger for something new? Because society told you to settle down and act your age? Let's rewrite that story. Your age doesn't mean the best is behind you. It means you've arrived at a moment of clarity, a time when you no longer chase approval, no longer worry about appearances, no longer live for anyone but yourself. That's power. That's freedom. And that is the perfect starting point for change. Take a look at your life. Are there habits that no longer serve you? Beliefs that keep you small? Relationships that drain instead of nourish? Now ask yourself, if not now, when? Change doesn't have to be radical. You don't need to climb mountains or run marathons. Sometimes change is as simple as taking the longer walk home, trying new food, joining a class, saying no when you've always said yes, or finally saying yes to yourself. There's a quiet revolution happening among the elderly. More and more people are rejecting the myth that age equals decline. They're writing new chapters instead of rereading the old ones. You can be one of them. You already are, just by being here, reading this, letting this message in. If you've ever whispered, "I'm too old for that," to yourself, write 5 in the comments below. Let it be your line in the sand. Let it be the moment you stop using age as a shield for fear and start using it as a badge of readiness. And if you're still hesitating, if some part of you still clings to the past, memories of better days, versions of yourself you miss, then what comes next is especially for you. Because the 6th truth is this: you can't fully embrace the present if you're still clinging to the past. Tip 6. Don't cling to the past. There's a kind of comfort in looking back, in remembering the days when your body moved with ease, when laughter echoed through your home, when your purpose felt certain. It's human nature to hold on to moments that made us feel alive. But when memories become a home instead of a window, we risk living in yesterday and missing today. I once sat with a man named Henry, 81 years old, who spoke often about his glory days as a high school football coach. His eyes would light up as he recalled the victories, the friendships, the respect he once commanded. But every time the conversation shifted to his current life, his voice would quiet, and a fog of sadness would set in. The truth is, he finally told me, nothing in my life now feels worth talking about. That's the danger of clinging too tightly to the past. Not that memories are bad, but that we begin to believe the best parts of us are already over. And when we believe that, we stop showing up fully for the life that's still unfolding. Don't get me wrong, your past is precious. You've earned every story, every scar, every lesson. Your memories are a rich archive of experience, but they are not the only meaningful part of your existence. You are still here, which means life is not finished writing you. I've met so many older adults who spend hours reminiscing, replaying moments from decades ago with longing in their voices. And I understand why. The past feels safe, familiar, predictable. In a world that moves too fast and forgets too quickly, your memories feel like the one thing no one can take from you. But here's the truth. If you live in the past too long, you start to disappear from the present. You miss the joy of a sunrise, the thrill of a new book, the warmth of a spontaneous conversation. You begin to lose interest in creating new memories because none of them feel as golden as the old ones. But what if you gave today a chance? What if you believe that there is still beauty ahead? That the best part of your life doesn't have to be the youngest part, but the most conscious, most authentic, most peaceful part? You are not just a collection of memories. You are a living soul, capable of discovery, wonder, and joy right now. But to access that, you must release the grip you have on what once was. You must stop saying, "back in my day," and start asking, "what does this day hold?" One of the most powerful shifts you can make is from nostalgia to presence. Visit your memories, yes. Cherish them, but don't build your house there. Let the past inspire you, not imprison you. Think of your life like a photo album. The early pages are full, beautifully written, but the album isn't finished. There's still room for more. For laughter you haven't shared yet. For moments you haven't lived yet. For love you haven't felt yet. And don't fall for the myth that later in life joy is less meaningful than what came before. In fact, it's often deeper, more intentional, more soulful, because it's not rushed. It's not performative. It's just real. So if you find yourself clinging to the past, not just remembering it, but reliving it more than you're living now, ask yourself, what am I afraid of in the present? What am I avoiding in the now? Because sometimes nostalgia is a mask for grief or regret or the fear that nothing ahead can match what's already behind. But here's what I believe. The soul doesn't age the way the body does. It stays open, curious, hungry for meaning. If you nurture that part of yourself, life can still surprise you in the best ways. If this truth resonates, I invite you to comment 6 below. Let it be your quiet commitment to return to the present, to stop visiting the past like it's your only home, and to start building something beautiful in the now. Because as much as we need to let go of what once was, there's another truth we need to face. One that's more physical, more private, and often misunderstood. And it's this. Even our relationship with pleasure and comfort needs balance. Which brings us to the 7th and final truth. One that's not often talked about out loud, but absolutely deserves our attention. Tip 7. Don't masturbate every day. Let's talk about something few dare to mention. Something deeply personal, often wrapped in silence, especially as we grow older. Your relationship with pleasure. Specifically, the kind of pleasure you experience alone. Masturbation, when done in moderation, is not wrong. In fact, it can be a healthy form of self-care, a way to understand your body, reduce stress, and feel connected to your physical self. But when it becomes a daily escape, not from desire but from loneliness, boredom, or emotional emptiness, it's time to ask deeper questions. I remember working with a 69-year-old man named Thomas. He was open, warm, and thoughtful, but one day he said something that stopped me cold. "I don't even enjoy it anymore. I just do it to fill the silence." That sentence stayed with me because it speaks to something that many won't say aloud, that sometimes we mistake a physical habit for emotional nourishment. As we age, our lives change. Children leave home, relationships shift, days become quieter, and the kind of affection we once took for granted becomes harder to find. In that space, some reach for what's familiar and comforting. But here's the truth. When masturbation becomes a routine driven by emotional void rather than true connection to oneself, it can slowly disconnect you from everything else. Your social life, your creative energy, your sense of emotional presence. You're not wrong for doing it. There is no shame here. But if it becomes your only reliable source of pleasure, then it deserves a gentle examination. Because the purpose of pleasure isn't just to relieve tension, it's to awaken life. And overuse of any habit, even one rooted in the body's natural rhythms, can dull your connection to the deeper joys that life still offers. The act itself isn't the problem, it's the reason behind it. Are you reaching for this because you feel overwhelmed, unloved, unseen? Are you trying to manage feelings that have nowhere else to go? That's where the conversation shifts, from behavior to healing. You see, the desire for touch, intimacy, connection, it never goes away, no matter how old you are. But true intimacy isn't only physical. It's emotional. It's spiritual. It's the feeling of being known, accepted, and close. Not just to someone else, but to yourself. And when that level of connection is missing, we sometimes look for quick substitutes. But no matter how private the act is, if it's driven by emotional need, it leaves emotional residue. You may notice fatigue, a sense of dullness, even disconnection from your own joy. That's not because you're broken, it's because your body is trying to tell you there's more. So what's the alternative? It's not about shame or suppression. It's about balance. Finding pleasure in other areas of life, ones that don't fade after 5 minutes. Go for a walk and feel the sunlight on your skin. Plant something and watch it grow. Cook a meal slowly and with care. Call someone who makes you laugh. Let music move through your body again. These moments may seem small, but they fill the same need to feel alive, whole, and connected. And if you choose to keep self-pleasure as part of your life, let it come from a place of care, not escape. Let it be one piece of your emotional and physical well-being, not the cornerstone. When we choose presence over compulsion, we return to ourselves. We feel more. We notice more. We become more available to the life around us. And isn't that what you deserve now more than ever? A life that doesn't depend on rituals done in silence, but one rich with color, curiosity, and calm. So if this resonates with you, if you felt the quiet weight of this topic and finally feel seen, comment 7 below. Not because you owe anyone an explanation, but because acknowledging it, even silently, is a powerful act of self-awareness. And now, as we reach the end of these 7 truths, I invite you to take a breath. Because what comes next is not another lesson, but a reminder. A reminder that every truth you've faced here is a doorway. And beyond those doors lies something so many people forget to reclaim in old age: the freedom to live entirely for yourself. So stay with me, just a little longer, as we bring it all together. You've made it to the end of this journey, and that alone speaks volumes about you. It means you're not just aging, you're awakening. You're not just drifting through these later years, you're choosing to reflect, to reclaim, to rebuild. The 7 truths we've explored weren't easy to hear. They weren't dressed in soft words or inspirational fluff. They were raw, direct, sometimes even painful, but each one was an open door leading back to something you may have lost sight of: your truest self. Along the way, maybe you saw yourself in Margaret, still answering the phone out of obligation. Maybe you felt that ache in your chest when we spoke of sacrifices that went unrecognized, of relationships that take and never give back, of dreams set aside for later that never came. Maybe you recognized how your own voice has grown quiet, not because you have nothing to say, but because you've spent a lifetime listening to others first. Let me tell you this: you are not too late. You are not invisible. You are not done. Aging is not an erasure of who you are. It's an invitation to become more of who you were always meant to be. These 7 lessons were not warnings, they were mirrors. Reflections to help you see that your worth was never dependent on how much you gave, how many people you pleased, or how long you stayed silent. Your worth is in your being, in the way you choose yourself now, perhaps for the first time in a long time. You've earned this chapter of your life. Every line on your face is a victory. Every scar, a story. Every quiet moment of courage, a legacy. So don't let anyone tell you that this stage is about fading. It's about focusing. It's about finally prioritizing peace over pressure, self-respect over sacrifice, clarity over chaos. You've given so much to others. Now, give to yourself. Give yourself the right to say no without guilt, to rest without justification, to explore something new not because you need to prove anything, but because your curiosity still lives. You're allowed to grow, to dream, to feel pleasure, to feel pain, to admit you're still healing, to begin again. You're allowed to live these years with boldness, not apology. And if something in this video stirred something inside you, whether it was a realization, a memory, or even a tear, I invite you to honor that feeling. Don't just click away. Don't scroll past. Leave a comment and share what resonated with you most. Write, "I'm ready," if that's what feels right. Or tell us which truth you needed to hear most today. You never know, your words could be the reason someone else decides to finally choose themselves too. And if this message brought even the smallest bit of value to your heart, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to this channel. Not just to support the work, but to let YouTube know that the voices, stories, and strength of older adults matter. That you matter. That you are not done giving, not to others, but to yourself. We're building something here. A community of wisdom, truth, and quiet power. And I hope you'll stay with us as we keep walking this path together. So as we close, I leave you with this. This is not the end of your story. It's a powerful new chapter. A return, not to the past, but to the essence of who you are. Take a deep breath. Lift your head. Feel your feet grounded beneath you. And remember, you are still becoming. And that is a beautiful, unstoppable truth.